my life is about freedom of time, which is, I know, what a lot of people are working towards. And I feel very, very fortunate that I'm nearly there of the freedom of time aspect. If you're going to go multiple gyms, don't go 2, go 4 or 5. Going 2 gyms is kind of the death trap.
We hear a lot of like partnership horror stories. I've certainly had my fair share. How did you go about handling that conversation? How did you do it in a way that saved the friendship? Hello and welcome to Gym World Worldwide. I'm your host, John Franklin, riding solo today because my compatriot Mateo Lopez is onboarding people onto Kilo, a gym management software that makes running your gym easier and more profitable. But fear not, I have a very special guest. Today, we're going to be talking to Jared Byczko of Myriad Fitness. Did I do it right this time?
That's the proper Polish way. Byczko is the Polish way. The American way is Byczko, but anything works with as many vowels as I have.
I wanted to have you on today because I've been playing this idea in my head of how gym owners can use their gym as this wealth vehicle to retire, right? We look at some of these affiliate meetups, some of these 10-year affiliates where like a lot of them are going and shutting their gym down or selling their gym for equipment value and then going and taking a job somewhere. And for the impact that gym owners do, for the work that it takes to run a successful gym, that's not the outcome we're looking for. And I think with a couple small changes, it can be a profoundly different outcome. And something that could be a 7-figure difference in net worth over the course of running a gym for 5 to 10 years. And you had a multi-million-dollar exit on your gym building, almost 10x what you bought it for. You made a bunch of mistakes along the way, and we'll talk about all of those. But you kind of we've talked to guests where they're very strategic about their plan. You kind of like put yourself in the right place at the right time. It sounds like you stumbled onto this incredible opportunity. And I think if we can kind of do a post-mortem on it, a lot of gym owners can learn from what you did and hopefully have a similar outcome as you. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about your current gym.
Yeah. So thanks again for having me. Right now we rebranded recently to Myriad Health and Fitness. We originally started as CrossFit Naptown back in 2011. My business partner at the time, Peter Brazovan, we known each other since we were 6 years old. Started in 2011 with CrossFit Naptown, the old school story of wanted to be competitive athletes, went to regionals as a team many times, went to the games as a team in 2014, and then realized that we should actually create a business out of this and rebranded to Naptown Fitness. And then 2021, 7 years later, rebranded to Myriad Health and Fitness. And that's where we're at now. We have 8 different programs from CrossFit to boot camp to yoga, nutrition, longevity, kids programs, personal training. So a lot of different revenue streams, which we can jump into that later, whether that's good or bad. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's terrible because we can't stay hyper-focused on one thing. Which is a big issue for us. And I'm sure other gyms have felt that as well. So I've been through this journey since 2011. And to your point, have found, an early retirement, so to speak. One of my goals was always to retire before I was 40. And I'm never going to be officially retired, but functionally retired. And it's because of commercial real estate. And it's been a journey, been fun.
I love that term, functional retirement. I can tell you what I think that means, but what does that mean to you?
Honestly, that means I can wake up every single day and do what I love. I was struggling. So 2022, I bought out my business partner, Peter, who's my best friend. We were together for 11 years, growing CrossFit Naptown Fitness, Myriad Health and Fitness, and bought him out. And then about 3 months later, my wife, myself, and my 4-year-old daughter were in Ireland. And I was contemplating whether I even wanted to do this anymore. Did I want to be known as the gym guy for the rest of my life? And I kind of came back to the old story, fable, myth, whatever you want to call it, of the fisherman in Mexico who, his Mexican fisherman is out on a pier, out on a dock, and a New York investment businessman goes to him and talks about, hey, like, can you take me out on a boat? And the fisherman's like, sure, I'll take you out on a boat, and goes through this whole process. They enjoy their day, drink some beers, hang out, and then they get back to the dock, cook up the fish. Really enjoy it. New York investment firm guys just like, hey, why don't you do this for a living? We can, get some private investment money, build out this fleet, do this whole project, and make you millions of dollars. Like, I could do that, or I can just do what I do every single day, which is take out individuals like yourself and go out on a boat, and then have some fun, fish, and then come back and drink some beers. And it really kind of resonated with me, where it's like, if I were to do something different, what would I do? I would do what I'm doing. Is that I would wake up, I'd go to the gym, I'd work out, I would have coffee with friends and coaches. I would talk to them, hang out, maybe work out again, maybe talk a little bit more. And that's what I do for a living as a gym owner. And it's, building relationships, and it's been absolutely phenomenal from that standpoint. And that's what I want to continue doing. So that's where I consider functional retirement being able to wake up and do what I want to do and have control over my entire calendar throughout every single day.
As an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to say, hey, I've got enough. And also to say like, hey, this situation is really good, right? Yeah. I look back on my career, and there were like very specific moments in time that felt very magical. And they could have continued for much longer than they did had we not been so aggressive in pursuing growth. And there's no right or wrong answer here, right? I'm a big fan of Derek Sivers, and his whole thing is like, the great part about owning a business is you get to make all the rules, right? But it's very easy to get tempted, especially in our world, in Two Brain, when you're around a lot of successful gym owners who are doing all these incredible things, and you feel like you always got to be chasing that next carrot, and it never stops. And so, the way I view this concept of functional retirement is pretty similar to you, but in simple terms, for me, it's when you're removed from every element of your business that you don't like doing, and the cash flow from the business pays for your life expenses and then a little bit extra. And totally. So you can continue to do that indefinitely, because you, in essence, you are retired. You're doing none of the work that you don't want to be doing. You're doing stuff that brings you joy, and you have this asset that pays for your family, pays for your life.
Yeah. And, a friend of ours, Oscar, a good friend of ours, challenged me last Friday. Forget him. We were on a call last Friday, and he's just like, hey, why aren't you growing right now? Why, like, what's holding you back? And I was like, honestly, what's holding me back right now is me. I have a 10-month-old at home, or a 10-week-old at home, 4.5-year-old daughter. And like, I really want to be very present with my family right now. So something you and I have talked about before in the past is like, the gym itself right now is a lifestyle business for me. It's a lifestyle business in a sense of it does what you said, and in order to, it creates cash flow. It pays for our family, like overall taxes, joint taxes between my wife and I, as she's a high earner herself. So it's doing what I needed to do. And I've been reinvigorated in jumping back into CrossFit a little bit more, the coaching a little bit more. Just went to the summit this past weekend. So I'm excited to grow the business through that medium. And something you all talk about often is just like becoming the face of your business, or someone has to be the face of your business. We really haven't had that in a couple of years, and I'm getting prepped to jump back into that. Yeah.
Your wife's like a hotshot lawyer, right?
She is. She's in the IP world, intellectual property, specifically trademark. So anyone listening to this that needs help with trademarks, she crushes it.
Hey, don't copy Kilo websites word for word. Don't copy our images. We got some bulldogs. All right. We've run into some situations. So, I'm sure. I know Jared's wife, so be careful. Yeah, guys, a wealth building tip, marry a doctor or a lawyer or someone who just makes hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It makes the journey so much easier, And so
I know you say that jokingly, but it really does. I've been able to take a lot more risk. I've been able to gamble a little bit more with some ideas that we have, and sleep a little bit easier at night, because I know I have that, where previously, before we got married, the first 3 years of the gym, I didn't even know her. She wasn't a part of our life. I met her during an intro class, as many people have talked about, that have those stories within the CrossFit world. So I met her at the gym, but previous to that, like, it was scraping by, not paying ourselves, the whole, 9 yards. And we met while she was going through law school. So it wasn't like I just, married her right away.
Hey, if you're a single gym owner and you're hating on high ticket, you're really overlooking one of the biggest wealth building hacks for your gym and then for your lifestyle. All right, because it's also a deep pond that you can hunt from if you're like Jared. So anyway, you started pretty early, right? In opening your first gym.
2011. Yep.
2011. Yeah. And from what I understand, it was a multi-million-dollar facility right out the gate, right?
Yeah, I wish. It was training friends and family in the parks in downtown Indianapolis. And before that, it was learning CrossFit in downtown Chicago at one of the OG gyms of CrossFit Chicago. And then Peter and myself taking a mega bus from Chicago to Indianapolis to scout out a location to figure out where we're going to go. And that took months until we finally were able to find a location and get a lease signed.
Wasn't it something crazy like you paid like $500 or like you basically started your gym on a credit card?
Yeah, we essentially had a 6-month shotgun lease and we couldn't touch the building at all whatsoever, but it cost us $500 a month for 6 months. And we had to prove ourselves originally to our broker. We had to build out a presentation to our real estate broker who was trying to find us a location just for him to be like, okay, this is going to be a legit business. Because, 2011 CrossFit wasn't still a big name thing. And then once we proved ourselves as a broker, he then started shopping us around and found us a pretty awesome location, 5,000 square feet. That used to be an FBI technology type space where they used to outfit cars and security systems into cars. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a special moment in time, those early years of CrossFit where you could just start a gym for $30,000 and it would work more times than it didn't, right? I'm sure you could in some towns figure out a way to hobble together a gym for $30,000, but it's just so competitive now, and there's just so many well outfitted and established facilities that I just feel like that scrappy era where you're buying equipment like one floor mat at a time, one dumbbell at a time as you like sign on a new member. That was just Craigslist. That doesn't exist as much anymore. Yeah, exactly.
Peter just put up a Facebook post about all that, about how like the original Craigslist, the original where all of our equipment came from, working out at parks. And it's been a really good post and it's crushed it from a social media perspective.
So talk to me, it sounded like from what I understand, you were bouncing around from location to location and expanding the multi-facility for the first couple of years. Talk to me about the process of when you actually bought your first building and what that was like.
Yeah, so we were originally in a location downtown Indianapolis that we were renting, the one I was talking about, the shotgun lease that we had for 6 months. Executed well on that, and then we made that into a 5-year extension. So that took us to about 2000. That 5-year lease would have taken us to 2015 or 16. But prior to that, in about 2014, we realized that we wanted to have our own location, own space. We weren't looking to buy. We were actually looking to. At that time, we had just worked into rebranding from CrossFit Naptown to be Naptown Fitness, that whole trend that was going on at the time where you didn't want to just pigeonhole yourselves to be just a CrossFit gym. And Peter's partner, wife, ran our yoga studio, Practice Indie Yoga. So we're actually just looking for a yoga studio. And as we were looking for that, we started to find a couple different buildings that were pretty much too big for just a yoga studio. And our broker at the time actually found a building that was available for auction or on auction. And it was a unique setup because he essentially slid in, knew the owners, worked a deal with us where he bought the building himself. And then while Peter and I went out to get an SBA loan, which I know you've talked about here on the show, got the SBA loan, and we essentially wrote up a purchase agreement and a lease to where our broker was going to be our landlord for 30 days as he owned this building until we got an SBA loan. And then once we got the SBA loan, we then bought him out at a premium. I think it was like a 10%, 15, 20% premium. So he made about, I want to say 30 grand in 30 days by us buying the building off the broker, which we've talked to a couple of industry professionals in real estate now. They're like, that might have been a little shady, but it ended up working out, tenfold, pun intended, for us. So.
Sounds kind of illegal. I don't know too much about real estate law. We'd have to consult with your wife, but well, it worked out. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, so it turned out to be this building that we ended up buying was 11,000 square foot building. We were looking for 2,000 square feet for a yoga studio. And that's where we kind of had to figure out, well, it's like, well, what are we going to do with the other 9,000 square feet? And that's when we ended up creating a new program called Naptown Swift, which was essentially Sweat with Indy for Time. It's a boot camp class. And that ended up taking up about 7,000 of that square feet. Then we had a lobby for about 2,000 square feet, and then had a yoga studio for about 2,000 square feet. So that was our journey into buying our first building as we did.
The glory days. Yeah, there's a huge benefit of being out there in the Midwest, buying an 11,000 square foot building for $300,000 or a little over $300,000. That's absolutely insane. You were like in town, right? Like
yeah. I mean, this is downtown Indianapolis. So you're looking at 2014. We ended up buying for $385 was the all in number that we ended up buying off the broker essentially. And then, that whole journey turned into refinancing, which is stuff we could talk about later. But yeah, that was it. There's no way we can get in at that price at this point. And it's exactly what you've talked about before. 10% of 385, we put down probably 30, 40,000. And then, 35,000, I think was actually the dollar amount. We actually took out some money for equipment as well at the time to build out the space. And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing and a lot of lessons learned at that time.
Was it a 7A or a 504 loan? Do you remember?
7A is the easier one, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It was a 7A. Yes.
Okay. And was it for 25 years?
It was. I actually talked to Peter about this to get some details on it. So we had an SBA loan. Then we ended up in 2015 buying another gym on the kind of near north side of Indianapolis. And we refinanced into a commercial loan at that time because of the interest rates were also going down at the same time. And then to pull out some money in order to buy this other gym, I think we pulled it out and, took out about like 80,000 or some of that to buy a gym for 50,000. And then also pulled out some of the cash so then Peter and I could pay ourselves a little bit. And that was super helpful to go from commercial loan. The one thing we learned on that one was prepayment penalties. We actually, Peter reminded me, we got hit with two different prepayment penalties. The first time we refinanced, and then when we actually sold the building, we also got hit with prepayment penalties, which is some people will get, some, will let you out, some banks will let you out, some won't. And we unfortunately weren't able to.
Well, for SBA, your commercial, you probably got hit, but I think most SBA loans, they don't have a prepayment penalty. So, for your commercial, that makes sense. But let's go back a minute. So you said it was 385. You guys put down like 40 grand to buy this building. Who'd you use on the SBA side? Was it someone local, or how did you navigate that process?
Yeah, it was actually a contact from our broker, and it was getting to know people and building relationships. It was, I think it was Wells Fargo at the time, if I recall correctly, that took us through the whole process. And the gentleman that we worked with was taught us as we went, which was really interesting as well, which I really enjoyed. Like actually took time to kind of tell us what we're doing and why we're doing it, because we had no idea that we can pull out some money for equipment. We could pull out some money for the build out as well. So it worked. Yeah, it worked out really well going with that process.
So just for people who are listening, if you go to take out an SBA loan and you need some working capital to kind of expand your operations and the cash flow of your business can sustain the loan, they'll lend you more than the purchase price. So they'll lend you money to build out the space, make it look nice. They'll give you money for equipment. If you're a seasonal business, they'll give you money to pay employees, like an accounting firm where all their money's made during like one part of the year and then there's just no money on the backside. So there are a lot of creative uses with the SBA 7A loan program. And there's definitely a lot of benefit, even if you're not buying a building like immediately, to just finding someone who can navigate that process and help you, because it's there to be used. Like they want people to take that money. And, I don't know how many episodes we have to put on, how many millionaire gym owners we got to put on the show before you take the hint. So definitely something you want to learn. So 40 grand, how'd you get that money for the down payment? Did you guys have that cash flowing from the gym, or did you beg and borrow? What was the What was the source of that?
For us, it was we saved every dollar as we went through. We reinvested into the business or we saved. So we had a cash reserve that we built. And I know you've talked about this before. I think the Stu Bauer episode, and maybe it's another episode, I can't remember at this point, where it's just like in the first couple of years, here's the game plan, like save money because you don't know what it's going to necessarily be used for. You don't have to start off building a swanky gym from the get-go. And that's what we did. And we hung on to that money. We had enough. And, obviously it takes, especially with SBA, it takes over 2 years. You have to prove yourself as a business. You have to prove that you actually have cash flow as you go through. But yeah, it was our own saved money at that time from the business that we were able to do the down payment. And also, like, let it be known, when we bought this 11,000 square foot building, it was a capital clutch building for 40 years. So it was grease on top of grease, on top of oil, on top of oil. We had to get phase ones, phase twos, had to go through that whole process to figure out if this is even a space that we can have gym, fitness, and healthy people working out. And then the build out itself cost us 150, 125 grand to do so. So not only did we have to have a little bit of cash reserve in order to, for the down payment, but we also needed some of that for the build out, which, takes a lot of gamble and a lot of risk as well. Like, hey, we're going to invest all this money, a couple hundred, $100,000 into building out the space into a gym and see if it works. And luckily it did work. I think one of the things you all have talked about before is just like making sure that it's a strategic location as well. Like we knew that we were on the corner of 10th and Capitol, downtown Indianapolis. And, that's 10 blocks north of city center. So like we are downtown. And it's right on a corner. So we have through traffic one way south into the city that passes us. So our traffic count was in the tens of thousands. And it just was a very, very strategic play in getting that property, which then in the future brings us to 2 other buildings that we leased just south of that building, which we can talk about later as well. Or I can pull up a map.
So yeah, let's go and actually look at your thought process when you were going through the process, why you chose the location. Because gym owners often ask like, hey, where should I buy my building? And a lot of times they know in their gut, but like the most obvious thing is picking something that's on the path of progress. Like it should be pretty obvious in your town, where development is going, and you want to buy before everything's gotten sky high already. So that's just called like where everything's expensive and where it's getting more expensive, that's progress, and you want to be on that path. And all you got to do is wait after that. But talk us through what you guys were doing.
Yeah, so I just kind of pulled up a quick aerial, and I think you called it out earlier that we did just get lucky. I mean, to an extent, right? Like downtown Indianapolis in 2011 when we first opened, like nothing really went on downtown Indianapolis. And in 2014, same thing. Like buildings were available all over the place. Like it's one of my biggest regrets is that if I knew what I know now, 12 years later, I would have pulled capital, creative finance, everything I possibly could, and bought as many buildings as I possibly could, because now we're essentially priced out because big players, developers have come in. But so down here is where like the city center is kind of down south. So we're on 10th, and I'm going to click in here. So this is essentially the 10th and Capitol space I was talking about. So this is 922 North Capitol. So Peter and I were able to acquire this entire lot, lands, and building, which was just a steel structure building. I think I have it pulled up right here. So this is our building. Simple 11,000 square feet, 922 North Capitol. Bought this for $385 in 2014. So that was the play for us, knowing that there's a parking lot that's right behind us that we did not own. And then what ended up happening is in 2016, these 2 buildings, 916 and 914 Capitol, which is this building, 916 Capitol, and then 914 Capitol, became available for lease. And so then Peter and I worked for about a year with those owners of that building to figure out how we can get that under contract so we can lease it. And then not even just get it under contract, but we also like really worked hard. We tried to buy it, but really worked hard to get first right of refusal so we could purchase it into the future, which comes into play later on when we actually did sell our property.
Touch those with the mouse there. So right on the backside. So if you're listening to this, there's 2 main streets, and then they got just a pretty basic looking building, and then there's a big parking lot. And on the backside, there's 2 buildings. And so you leased both of those. So you
Correct.
owned the big building in the front. You had two tiny buildings in the back, and you were just housing, like one of them was a yoga studio, one was weightlifting. And so they're housing different concepts, right?
Correct.
One was a boot camp, I think. What was the third one?
This one was boot camp. This one was yoga. This one's CrossFit, and now host our weightlifting, CrossFit, and personal training up there. And then
So you built like this little empire. You got a little fitness food court here, a little something for everybody.
Literally, we called it our downtown compound because people would drive up and they would park and would hang out. They could go take a yoga class. They could go jump in their CrossFit class. I mean, there were people literally taking 2 or 3 classes back to back to back because they could and because it was down in that space. So yeah, and we also subleased to a myofascial specialist, MyoFit, as well, in this little side building over time as well, which helped us from a cash flow perspective too.
And when you did this, your revenue mushroomed, right? Like you went from when you bought the building, you were doing, around 600-ish, and you guys almost doubled, right? When you set this all up.
Yeah, and that was also partially because in 2015 we bought that second location in the north side or near north side of Indianapolis as well, which was about 110, 120 members at its peak. So that was an extra cash flow of 12, 15, 20 grand at its best. So that allowed us to jump up there. And we also at that time had nutrition and kids programs that were growing throughout 18, 19, 20, previous to 21. So we had a lot of different entrepreneurial programs going at the same time.
Staffing all that shit hard sounds like a nightmare, trying to keep track of all these programs and making sure you got somebody good in there. Yeah,
that's been the hardest part. People just in general, whether it be members, whether it be staff, and building relationships with each of those individuals. But yes, I mean, the hardest part that we currently find right now is having 8 solid programs and finding like a program coordinator for each of those and being able to staff that, having someone be the champion, the visionary, the leader of those programs. So that is a huge challenge that we still have. And sitting at the CrossFit Summit this past weekend and a lot of the gyms just being CrossFit gyms or just being CrossFit and personal training, I envy that greatly to an extent.
Yeah, you're talking to me about simplicity and being available for your family, and you don't want too much complication. And now you got like 8 different programs in your thing, man. I was like, if I was getting back into the ring, I would just be one thing. That's what I loved. We had Rick Mayo on recently, and his concept is just, he stripped it down to the simplest possible thing. That's what he's doing. Jeff Shoemaker, who you're good friends with, he's doing the exact same thing and seems to be working for them, but it's a completely different model than this. So you get in there, you're operating, things are going well, right? You're dealing with the normal headaches of running multi-location, right? So staffing, one location cannibalizing the other, all that stuff, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yeah, that was a challenge because at the time that we bought this building right here at 922 North Capitol, we actually had our CrossFit gym on the other side of the city. So that took a year or two to figure out, like, this isn't working. So that's when the 914, 916 buildings became available. We shut down our CrossFit gym. Our lease ran up over on the other side of the city. We moved that into the building we bought. And then that's when we moved boot camp and yoga into these other 2 properties and built this downtown compound, which made things much, much simpler from that perspective.
So you shut down the second location?
We ended up shutting down the second location in COVID. Yes. But yeah.
2020?
2020. Yep. November 2020.
Okay. And basically went all in on this space.
Correct. All in downtown.
How good did that feel?
Felt really good. I mean, that's one of the things that you learn quickly is when you're a business owner, that if you have problems at another space, you're the one that has to deal with the problems. If the toilet breaks, if the garage door breaks, like, your coach isn't going to fix it. You have to drive there and fix it. And I know there's conversations where it's like, if you're going to go multiple gyms, don't go 2, go 4 or 5, go, plus scale, economies of scale, do it accordingly. Going 2 gyms is kind of the death trap. And we learned that lesson pretty quickly, that we shouldn't, and we still struggle with it as well, having multiple buildings, even within just having one gym, it still is a struggle. So we're excited for our new venture going into one complex.
Yeah, I've seen it work. The guys I know who've gotten up to that like 5 range plus and stayed there had a very simplified concept, didn't require a ton of staff. and they always had like that operator person who is either like had equity in the space or was incentivized and compensated like they did. And it just made it really easy. Obviously, there are large gym chains who do what you're like lifetimes doing what you're doing, but on a much grander scale with a bunch of different programs. And they're reinventing the country club. That's their spin. But yeah, it seems like
Is that the
this
Alpha?
would be that's their CrossFit knockoff, right?
Yeah, that was a big point of conversation at the CrossFit Summit this past week in the Midwest Summit. Someone was asking about Alpha and what CrossFit's response is to that. So I didn't even know that was a thing.
What was it?
The response was continue to do what you're doing as a CrossFit gym and really pour into your members and pour into your staff and get educated and coach your members. Like coaching is our product, because eventually Alpha is just going to fall to the wayside, just like every other program that's tried to knock off CrossFit. So that was the informal answer, essentially, from the team.
All right, keep chasing excellence.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh my God. Okay. Hey, Gym World. Oh yeah. Hey, Gus. Hey, Gym World. Pretty cool episode so far. I think Jared, really smart guy, making lots of money in real estate, and drinking whiskey on the pod, which I think is pretty unique. I'm gonna start doing that, I think, moving forward. No, Gus. So I don't know if you know this, but today is October 5th. You're gonna see the episode tomorrow on October 6th. But as I'm filming this, today is actually my birthday. So what I'm doing for my birthday is I am earning my dopamine, and I hope you do as well. And the best way to earn yourself some dopamine is to sign up with Kilo. Kilo can actually help you grow your gym, retain members, and make more money. And the best gift that you could give me for my birthday, oh my God, is if you buy yourself some Kilo. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just enjoy this nice little cold plunge with some donuts from a local donut place. My business partner John Franklin, also co-founder of Kilo, got me one of these. So cheers, and never weaken, always harden. We'll see you out there.
So you guys are operating there. You're on the up and up. 2019 comes around. You have the two locations. We talked about COVID forcing you to shut down to one. What other things happened during COVID that kind of had an impact on the trajectory of the business?
Yeah. So we had a nutrition program. We were working with HSN, Healthy Steps Nutrition. We had a nutrition coach who was leading that piece of the puzzle entirely on its own. Like, we hired HSN, let him go through the entire training, build a nutrition program that was making nearly 10K per month. And then in October of 2020, he decided to leave and take that entire business with him. So that was a huge hit to us financially through COVID as well. Luckily, one cool thing there is we had a non-compete, and we had to actually enforce that non-compete. So we actually got paid with him leaving, because he knew that he was taking clients away from us, and the way the non-compete worked, rather than going to court and going through that whole process, that really stuck strong for us, and felt good that we did something right from a legal perspective that actually benefited us, even though like long-term it crushed us because we just lost our nutrition program. So that was one area. And then we also lost our kids program during COVID just because of the shutdown, and the program director at that time left to go into a different industry and find another career. So that was a big hit for us financially. So two of our big supplementary programs essentially went to zero and dissolved, and still working on regrowing those and rebuilding those at the time.
So you obviously take a hit to group training revenue. You take a hit to your nutrition program. So you built this massive program they did. Obviously your kids program, it's kind of shot. So it's just a dark time, kind of like it was for literally every single gym owner on the planet there. when did things turn around? Like, when did you first get approached to sell your building?
Yeah, so we actually, we bought it in 2014, and the previous owner of this big development across the street, there's a 400,000 square foot development across the street called the Stutz Project, the Stutz Building. And the original owner of that building tried to buy us for like 400,000. They, for whatever reason, didn't want to fork over the 350 at the auction, and is probably one of their biggest regrets they ever had. Then fast forward 5 years later, after us saying no to them, about 2020, end of 2020, maybe early 2021. That was the end of 2020 for sure, is when we finally were approached by a New York investment firm who was buying the entire Stutz development, the 400,000 square feet development that's across the street from us, for, like 100 million or 90 million or some crazy number they were buying that Stutz, the development for. They started giving us offers and essentially came to us. I'll never forget, the first offer was just like, hey, we'll give you $1 million for your building. And although $1 million sounds awesome, something you and I have talked about before in the past is Peter and I actually had to refinance that building numerous times to pull out cash for other business ventures that we worked ourselves into. So, when we acquired 914, 916, those two other buildings, we had to spend $250,000 to build out those buildings. We didn't have $250,000. So we refinanced 922, the building we owned, to pull out the money in order to build out those spaces so we could run yoga and we could run boot camp in those spaces. We also, when we refinanced, we also took 50,000 of that and invested into a local food delivery company as well, that's still out there and still operating, in which, it was a Series A investment that Peter and I put money into. So like, we've done different things with that money that we worked ourselves through, which was super helpful.
So yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So when you buy a building and it appreciates, you can essentially take out another mortgage later in time and capture some of the value. So if your $300,000 building turns into $1 million building, there's 700,000 in equity in that building. So you can take a mortgage for, typically, if you're doing commercial, which it sounds like you guys did, it's probably like the bank will probably want you to have 30% of the equity down and give you the rest. Does that sound about right?
Correct.
Yeah. So if the building's now worth $1 million, the bank will give you 700,000. So 70% of the value. And so if they don't pay, the bank gets the building, and then Jared and Peter can go use that money to buy more spaces, make investments, just turn money into more money. And so what you're saying is, when the development firm came around and was like, hey, we'll give you $1 million. Well, it sounds like a big number to people listening to this. It was like, hey, we'd taken out 700,000 already on this thing. So if we took the $1 million, we're just kind of walking away with jack all.
Yeah, that's exactly the situation. And we laughed at them essentially, and they're just like, what? This is a good dollar amount. It's like, yeah, but what you don't know is what the building's worth and what we pulled out, to where it's like 680 was the number. It's like, so we sell to you for $1 million, there's 320,000, then you add capital gains to that, as well as, lawyer fees and everything. It's like, we'd walk away with what, 50,000, 100,000 on that building. So what led us to saying no was exactly that. Also the fact that their big play was they wanted us as a tenant into their 400,000 square foot space. They threatened us, and we were like, well, if you don't come in here, we're going to put an Orange Theory in here. We're going to throw an F45 in here. That's going to literally be across the street from you all. And we're just like, cool, go for it. Like, we have no issue with that. And our big play with Peter and I was the fact that we had the building we own, 11,000 square feet, the two other buildings under contracts, as well as first right of refusal. And then we had tons of parking around us. All of the buildings that we had parking. So we had about 50 parking spaces. And what they were trying to do was get us to sell for the cheapest dollar amount and then immediately become a tenant of theirs, and then pay, $15 a square foot, $20 a square foot, pay for parking, pay for utilities, pay for all these things. And our big pushback was, the only way we'll even entertain an offer from you is if you give us exactly what we have now, because we have a functional, sustainable business that's running, and we proved ourselves for the last 10 years. If you can give us exactly this in a deal moving into this development, then we'll talk. And that was the initial, after they offered us the $1 million, we said that to them, and then it was kind of like an aha moment for them. So then it took another year of back and forth, different offers, different, pulling on different levers, trying to figure out what it would look like from a purchase price perspective, plus all the other incentives. And finally, in September of 2021, is when we got to a deal where we finally closed on selling our building to them with lots of different benefits and caveats, which we can talk about as well, because I think it was a lot of fun and interesting looking back on it of what we were able to negotiate.
Yeah, because essentially the first offer was we'll buy your building for $1 million, and then you're going to be a tenant of ours and basically pay it all back to us and then some, because we're going to gouge you on the rent.
Exactly.
And you guys, plus you'd already taken out a lot of money on the building.
And I don't fault them, right? Like, these are New York investment guys. I'm an Indianapolis gym owner. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't, like that's exactly what their play was. Like, well, hopefully Peter and Jared are idiots and we can just take advantage of them. But we had a lot of mentors. We have a broker who's been on our side, who's been a member for 10 plus years, who was walking us through the entire deal. We have one of my best friends works in real estate development himself. So he understands what land value is worth. And when someone's going to go vertical, like what that exponential growth looks like for that company and how much wiggle room they have in their budget to actually buy us because of what that land's going to be worth in the future from appreciation. So
let's pull up that screen share so you can show people what that Stutz thing looks like.
So the Stutz building is this big giant, I'll re-click here, but so this is our space right here. This big giant warehouse, Keepers of Culture mural, is going to be 12,000 square feet for us. But this video that's shooting really quick is the entire space. So we're becoming a part of a community, of a complex. There's coffee shops, there's plant shops, there's bars there, and we're in that complex.
So for the people listening, it's just everybody in this video looks like me. It's just like wearing a camo hat and a mustache and like short shorts. And they're pitching it as like this artsy, cool place where you walk around. There's a picture of a dog walking around. There's mariachis, tea lights. So, it looks like you're going to be able to buy $7 cups of coffee in this thing.
Yeah, exactly. I just got a $6 cold brew this morning.
Sick. And so and then your space was basically like a critical part of the development, right?
Correct. And I'll click on this one here. So this is a different overview, and this is an older picture, but like this warehouse over here is 12,000 square feet. This is going to be our fitness building. So it's going to have CrossFit, boot camp, and weightlifting. And then right here is where our yoga studio is going to be. And then the rest of this is just tenant space, built-in clients. And then you can see this little clip here. This is our small, tiny little building, tiny little property that they bought for us. And then the two other buildings right back here and that space back there.
So when you say where we're going to be, that's where they're moving you. And then all the way in the back there, that's your existing property. And I'm assuming they're going to knock that down and build up like another
Correct.
Building that looks like this kind of.
Correct. They're actually going up vertical. I know this is probably... I had these pulled up earlier, but sorry.
So these look like the actual
these are the plans.
The zoning. This is the zoning.
This was
plan?
the zoning hearing of what they're actually building there. So you can see they're going crazy, just knocking down our building and building this giant. I mean, it's going to be an entire city block that they're building up.
These are apartments. That looks like a pool there. Yeah,
retail apartments, retail on the first floor, condos on the second floor as they build up in that realm. So
basically, that was part of the master plan. They needed the condos in there to get the people with the mustaches to buy the podcast studio spaces, and so they needed you.
Yep, and that was exactly it. Was we knew what their development was going to look like. We knew what they were going for, and we knew that we had some negotiation in there. So we started off at $1 million, and I remember sharing with our broker what our final number was, because Peter and I ended up doing the whole deal on our own. We asked mentors, but we hired lawyers from the lawyer perspective, which I 100% would give people advice, hire lawyers from the start when you're going through working against an investment firm, because they are super, super savvy. There is a strategy we can talk about later. They retraded on us literally in the last 24 hours of the deal when we were supposed to close, which kind of killed us for a couple $100,000. But we were so dead set into what the deal is going to be that we ended up agreeing to it anyways.
What did they do in the last 24 hours? Let's talk about the deal and then explain how they got $200,000 out of you in 24 hours.
Oh, it was more than that, I would say. So the overall deal, was $2.25 million cash was the purchase price. Then we had $400,000 to build out into this new development, which we're literally in the process of moving into right now. So $400,000 of TA, tenant allowance, their tenant improvement. We had $25,000 from an architectural fee because we needed architects to design our new space. And then also had built in 3 years of free rents. So when we have, once we got landlord deliverables, which turned out to be May of 2023, we had 5 more months of free rent. And then October 15th of this year, 2023, starts year 1, month 1 for us. And then we have 3 more years of free rents. What's really crazy about it is we closed in September of 2021, and we were supposed to get keys in October 2021. But as we all know, with the supply chain, economic climate, all of that, they've had so many delays that we're now 2 years later that we're finally starting our 3 years of free rent. So we're actually going to end up having 5 years of free rent all in, which comes out to, I did the math earlier, $420,000 over a course of 5 years. And then on top of all that, because Peter and I had the first right of refusal on those 2 smaller buildings that I showed earlier, we were able, and this is something that like, we had no idea we could even do this, but someone just told us to do it. We negotiated, we would not sell the buildings. We would not go through this deal, and they would not do the deal unless we included those buildings, because that gave them that full city block. So it was a game of Monopoly at the end of the day. But because we had 914, 916 right of refusals, we wouldn't do the deal unless the owner would turn over those right of refusals to this investment firm. And Peter and I wouldn't do it unless we got a fee, a brokerage fee, essentially. So after this deal is all signed in September, part of it is also when they sell, officially close, because we turned over to the right of refusal, as soon as they sell, which I think it's going to be for like 1.25 or a million or 1.5, I forget what it is, Peter and I actually get 13% of that as well. So we're going to get a check of $86,000 early next year, just because we had them sign a piece of paper saying that like, we're not doing we have the right of refusal on this. It's on us. So
if you're a gym owner and you're signing a lease, get yourself a right of first refusal. Get yourself a nice ironclad one, and get yourself a nice bulldog lawyer to write it out. Real good. That's awesome, because they were planning on giving you the key. They're basically planning on moving you as quickly as possible, and then it just didn't happen.
Correct.
And since they own your building, you're still operating in your original building, but you haven't been paying rent for 3 years. And then when you move into the new fancy built out wonderful building, that kicks off a 3-year free rent period that you negotiated in the deal.
Correct. And also free parking for 50 spaces, which they're originally trying to charge us. Like other tenants are going to be charged like $1 per hour, or they're being charged something where parking was going to be like $90,000 a year for us. And we're just like, we're not doing that. And so we were able to negotiate ourselves out of that. We don't have to pay for parking. We also have a 5+5. So we have 5 years of this deal. And then we don't even have to continue for the next 5. But we built out fixed costs. We know exactly what our rent is going to be for the first 5 years, and we know exactly what our rent is going to be for the second 5 years. And none of it comes even like, I think we might touch $10 a square foot in this complex where everyone else is paying, $20+ a square foot. So we've got ourselves set up from that perspective too.
And so, how they screw you for a few $100,000? Yeah,
so this was a wild one. Peter and I were really excited. We worked all the way into this deal. The original offer was, I think, $2.75 million cash. And it was like the day before, 2 days before we were going to close, they called, and they also had built out different design plans to where we're going to have like this fitness alley. We're going to have all of our spaces right next to each other. And then they called us one day and were just like, hey, we can't do this deal. We're upside down on this deal. Like, you guys are getting everything that you wanted. We can't do this. We're out. And we're like, what do you mean you're out? Like, we just spent 1.5 years on this. We're not out. Like, Peter and I have already mentally spent some of this money or invested some of this money mentally in different areas. And they just kind of explained to us, like, we had the balance of the lever was too far on our side. And so we had to go back to the drawing table and renegotiate some things to where they would not offer as high of a purchase price. They would give us a little bit more in tenant allowance into the future space. We originally had an uncapped tenant allowance, so we were looking at $800,000 to $1 million for our future build out, which you can imagine the design drawings for that were pretty epic.
Just gold chandeliers.
Yeah, marble flooring in the bathroom and all. I mean, it wasn't that crazy, but it was pretty wild.
Under the rig, it's marble flooring. Yes.
And so we then had to, talk to ourselves, talk to our wives, some mentors, be like, well, where can we give up some things? Like, what is our bottom line? Is this still a good deal for us? At the end of the day, we realized that it was still a good deal for us. It's part of what we've always wanted to be, which was part of an ecosystem of different high level brands in our city. So a lot of the coffee shops and some of the high end restaurants that do really, really well, we are now a part of that, which is something I've always wanted to do and be a part of. So we ended up pulling the trigger, but we talked to a few investment people and they're like, oh yeah, that actually happens in industry often, where they pretty much sucker you in and build out this beautiful, huge deal that's, like you're winning in every way possible. And and then let that sit for a couple of months. And then when you're getting ready to sign or getting ready to close, they'll retrade on you a little bit and pull away essentially and say they're not doing it because of X, Y, and Z. And then that's a negotiation tactic to where then you get panicked and then you have to agree to some of these things and some of these concessions, which is what we ended up doing. And after the fact, we found out that it's like, oh yeah, they retraded on you. Yeah, that happens in this industry all the time. It's just like, well, why didn't anyone tell us? But it still ended up being an insanely good deal for us over, as you can see with the incentives and everything. So it's been over a $3 million deal.
Tip of the hat to the Harvard MBAs who did that one. But pro tip for all
Wharton Business School. Yeah.
All the Wharton boys. So there you go. That's a little tip you can take with you if you're ever beaten up on a gym owner, retrade at the last minute.
I almost used that in another deal here a couple months ago. I almost did it, but then to the other person, but I didn't because I just not that type of person.
That's what we provide here. Cutthroat tactics, free alpha, and you don't even have to write a single tuition check. All you got to do is like and subscribe. So we can bring more hot tips like this from the Wharton classroom. So deal goes through. You guys are in the money, and then your partner moves away, right? Like at sometime during this, Peter says, "I'm going to Alabama."
Yeah,
Indianapolis.
So some of that, some of that happened because of the pandemic. His wife is originally from Birmingham, Alabama, so they realized through the pandemic they want to be closer to her family and her brothers. Also, this deal was already in the works in early 2021 when he kind of presented the fact that they were going to be moving. So we sort of knew that like when his deal closed at the end of 2021, that there would be, he would have money coming his way that would be very helpful for his future move and for his future plans and in his future city that he was going to live in. But yeah, fast forward, it was end of 2021. So we'd closed in September on this building. And also let it be known that, $2.25 million in cash, take out $700,000 for the refinance, what we owed back to the bank, take out $100K for lawyer fees, take 27% from capital gains from the money we actually brought in. So it is a significant amount of money in the hundreds of thousands, but it quickly gets eaten up very, very quickly. I know Andrea Savard talked about that as well. So it's something that we had to learn lessons on how to, hide that money from a tax perspective or utilize that money in better ways to where we weren't getting crushed on taxes. But yeah, end of 2021 had to have a hard conversation with Peter where I was essentially, he and his family moved in April of 2021 and I had to running the business here on site in Indianapolis and had to have a tough conversation saying like, hey, we need to do a transition. This isn't working from an ownership perspective. I'm here on site every single day. You're not. You're taking Zoom calls a couple hours a week with a couple staff members and we need to figure this out. So we ended up in January 2022 hiring a third-party valuation company and got a valuation. And it took us about 6 months of back and forth. He was here, I'm here on valuations and what I was willing to pay to buy him out. But finally on June 1st of 2022, we were able to come to agreement and move on from business partnership. Still really good friends, best friends, still talk every day, but yeah.
And so that had to be a pretty tough conversation. You said you guys had been boys since you were 6. From what I understand, you guys lived next door to each other at one point, and we hear a lot of like partnership horror stories. I've certainly had my fair share. How did you go about handling that conversation? And like, how did you do it in a way that saved the friendship?
Yeah, I mean, There's always a guiding principle for us that like we had to have an open and honest relationship. And that's taken years, since we were 6 years old. So 30 plus years for us to develop that. And when we first had the original conversation of him moving to Alabama, the very first thing he said was just like, if anything's wrong, anything's bothering you, any issues, like come to me right away and let's talk about it. And I sat in that and had to do that. And many times, we met a lot of times up, until December when I finally had the hard conversation with him. We met monthly about whether this is working, what's not working, why it's not working. So he wasn't blindsided by it when it came in December. But at the same time, he didn't really want to sell. And I think he openly would still admit right now that like you've seen our numbers before. Like we were getting, we're growing. 2019, I think we were 1.2 million as an overall business. 2020 hit, we started going down a little bit. So like by time 2021 hit, our valuation was cut in half of what it was at our peak. So like Peter knew that this made no sense from him financially, but at the same time, he also knew that he's the one that moved away for family reasons and was, hurting the business a little bit by not being on site. And so when I had to give actual evidence or actual data of like, hey, this isn't working, here it is, he saw the writing on the wall essentially. So that was how it all happened.
It's like, I'd imagine when you move into this beautiful new space in this complex, it's probably going to be like an inflection point for your business. I can't imagine it gets like your business gets worse because you have this awesome space in this awesome location. So I'm sure he probably saw that as well.
Yeah. And I think, for him, it was one of those scenarios where, we have different chapters of lives, right? And for him, it was a different chapter moving, to Alabama from Indianapolis, Indiana. And he also works for Two Brain Business. And, he had a good avenue to create a new version of himself, a new life for himself. Something we didn't talk about is, we were Naptown Fitness for 9 years, CrossFit Naptown prior to that. And then we rebranded in 2021 as well. So Myriad Health and Fitness was brand new, essentially. And then less than a year later, I bought out Peter. And so for me, it was a really good separation point, I guess you would say, to like Myriad Health and Fitness, in my opinion, is me and the business and the team that we have. And Naptown Fitness is like the past. It's not that business is dead by any means. I still love it and everything about it, but it gave me a good separation point for a new chapter in my life as well. And to speak to what you just said, I know you guys have talked about this on this episode before, but we've poured in, we have $400,000 of tenant allowance to build out this new space. I've personally taken out a loan of $150,000 to build out the space even more because it's costing us over $500,000 to build out this 12,000 square feet and 2,500 square feet yoga studio in this new complex because from a brand perspective and a feel perspective, like we have subway tile on our bathroom walls and in our showers and our locker rooms. We have epoxy floors. Like it's not just the old school CrossFit gym where you walk into and you're like, I'm afraid to go in that restroom. Like we poured in a lot of money into painting the interior of the building, 12,000 square feet. And like, so it's really, I'm very, very excited for the future of our business because it's going to be a unique CrossFit space, a unique fitness space as a whole. And I'm excited to have a destination location where people are going to come to us and want to see what the potential can be with starting off, in your garage or in a park with a CrossFit gym.
I'm excited. I really want to see what this turns out like. It looks sweet. I don't go to Indianapolis ever, but I might make a special trip next time I'm in Chicago. When we're at the summit next year, I might make a drive down, and assuming you're done then, may just keep getting pushed out indefinitely, which is probably okay for you because you just got free rent.
Yeah.
So talk to me. What's kind of next? Is it multi-location? Do you just want to build this up into as big of a space as you possibly can? Like what's your primary goal for Myriad?
Right now is to get moved into this new space. We just moved in our yoga studio last week, and it's people are already really pumped about it. Our yoga program really hasn't been doing well since pandemic. During pandemic, there just became a lot of options for yoga as a whole, online options, YouTube options. So getting people back in person for our yoga studio, as well as I kind of showed it on the pictures earlier, our yoga studio is always hidden in behind all these other buildings. So like to actually be in a square footage is super exciting. So that I'm pumped for that program to start growing again. I'm really excited for us to get the fitness side of this new building operational. I think that's going to take probably another 6 months or so for us to, how it is when you move into a gym, you change the flow 1,000 times. So like I want to find that flow in the next 6 months. And then honestly, I'm not really sure what's next. And I've been challenged by a few different mentors on this lately of like, hey, like you're almost, at the light of the end of the tunnel after a couple hard years. Like, what are you going to do next? And it's like, I actually just want to chill out for a little bit. I want to take a small little sabbatical, figure out what I want to do. Probably jump into some content, maybe become a little bit of a online influencer, become the face of the business a little bit more than I was in the past or have been as of late. So that's probably where I'm leaning towards. I don't want to go to multiple locations. I was actually just approached by a gym owner last Wednesday. I got a cold call asking me to buy a gym on the west side of Indianapolis. And I was immediately like, no, I'm not interested. Like,
I've done that before.
Yeah, exactly. Like, thank you. Maybe years ago, I would have jumped right on that. It's a successful gym, profitable gym, just have no interest from a time perspective. Right now, my life is about freedom of time, which is, I know, what a lot of people are working towards. And I feel very, very fortunate that I'm nearly there of the freedom of time aspect.
Well, that is smart, mature, and insightful. The type of insights you only get after getting kicked in the teeth for 10 years in the gym business. So, Jared, this has been awesome. Where do people go if they want to find out more about you?
Personally, I love chatting with people. So hit me up on Instagram, Byczko, JABYCZKO at JAByczko. Same thing on Facebook as well. Business wise, Myriad Fit, MYRIADFIT. So at Myriad Fit is our main Instagram, is our Facebook page as well. We also have some sub brands of Myriad Yoga and a few other Myriad weightlifting as well. You can find me anywhere in those areas, and happy to talk about gym business, happy to talk about life, mentorship, happy to talk about commercial real estate. So,
but he's going to retrade you on those fees. This has been another episode of Gym World Worldwide. Be sure to dislike, unsubscribe, and leave a hateful comment. Until next week, Gym World.